Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Architect of Order. Rex Weber had built his life with the precision of a master craftsman. At 34, he owned Weber & Associates, a boutique architectural firm in Portland that specialized in adaptive reuse, transforming forgotten buildings into something extraordinary. His portfolio included converted warehouses, repurposed churches, and historic factories reborn as mixed-use spaces. Rex didn't just design buildings. He understood how structures could be reimagined, how foundations could support entirely new purposes. His marriage to Lorraine Downs had followed a similar philosophy. They'd met 7 years ago at a gallery opening where Rex's firm had renovated a 1,922 bank into an art space. Lorraine, a curator's assistant with an infectious laugh and ambitious eyes, had complemented his vision. 6 months later, they married. Their daughter, Emma, arrived 2 years after that, a bright-eyed girl who inherited Rex's methodical nature and Lorraine's social charm. Rex's sister, Audrey McLean, had always been his anchor. 12 years his senior. She'd practically raised him after their parents died in a boating accident when Rex was 16. Audrey had put her own nursing career on hold to ensure Rex finished high school and got his architecture degree. Now, married to Dennis Olson, a commercial pilot, she lived 3 blocks from Rex in a renovated Victorian he designed for them. She and Dennis had no children of their own, so they doted on Emma, who spent every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon at Aunt Audrey's house while Rex worked late and Lorraine attended her book club. Except Lorraine hadn't been attending book club. The first hairline fracture in Rex's carefully constructed life appeared on a Wednesday morning in October. He'd returned home early from a site inspection to find Lorraine on the phone in their bedroom, speaking in hushed tones. When she noticed him, she'd startled, quickly ending the call with a clipped, "I'll talk to you later." "Who was that?" Rex asked casually, loosening his tie. "Just Jamie. Planning next week's book club." Lorraine's smile didn't reach her eyes. Jaime Patrick was Lorraine's closest friend, or so Rex had believed. But something in Lorraine's tone felt off, like a wall slightly out of plumb. Rex filed it away, the way he cataloged structural inconsistencies during building inspections. Over the following weeks, more cracks appeared. Lorraine began taking calls in the bathroom. She purchased new lingerie that Rex never saw her wear. She started going to the gym, something she'd always dismissed as boring, and came home with flushed cheeks and an evasiveness that set Rex's instincts humming. Rex wasn't naive, but he also wasn't paranoid. He believed in evidence, in observable patterns. So he observed. He noted that Lorraine's book club nights grew more frequent. He noticed she'd changed her phone's passcode. He saw how she'd angle her screen away when texting. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday in early November. Rex had scheduled a meeting with a potential client that was canceled last minute. Instead of returning to the office, he decided to pick Emma up early from Audrey's house and surprise Lorraine with a family dinner. He drove through the downpour, Emma's favorite playlist filling the truck. When he pulled up to Audrey's Victorian at 4:30 p.m., he noticed something immediately wrong. Audrey's car wasn't in the driveway. She was supposed to be home. She always was on Thursdays. Dennis was flying a Seattle to Phoenix route. Rex tried his key in the front door. It didn't turn. He jiggled it, thinking the lock might be sticking in the cold. Nothing. Confused, he knocked. No answer. He knocked harder, calling out, "Audrey, Emma?" Silence pressed back at him. Rex's pulse quickened. He circled the house, peering through windows. The curtains were drawn, unusual for Audrey, who loved natural light. He tried the back door, also locked, and his key didn't work there either. Something was profoundly wrong. He called Audrey's cell. It rang through to voicemail. He called Dennis. No answer expected, since he'd be mid-flight. He tried Lorraine. Straight to voicemail. A cold dread settled in Rex's stomach, the same feeling he'd had the night he got the call about his parents' boat. He dialed 911. "I need police at 2847 Ashwood Drive. My daughter is inside, but the locks have been changed and no one's answering." The dispatcher tried to calm him, asked clarifying questions. Rex provided answers mechanically, his architect's mind racing through scenarios, each more disturbing than the last. Why would the locks be changed? Where was Audrey? Where was Emma? The police arrived within 8 minutes, Officer Jackie Maddox and his partner, a younger cop named Gene Downs. Rex explained the situation, his voice steady despite the panic clawing at his chest. Maddox assessed the situation, then used a locksmith tool to jimmy the front door open. The house was silent, too silent. Maddox entered first, his hand on his holster. Rex moved to follow, but Maddox held up a hand. "Sir, let me clear the residence first." Rex waited on the porch, rain soaking through his jacket. Gene Downs stayed with him, radio crackling with routine traffic. Seconds stretched into minutes. Then Maddox appeared in the doorway, his face ashen. "Sir, you shouldn't look." "Why?" Rex pushed past him. "Sir, your daughter is all ready." Rex didn't hear the rest. He was already moving through the foyer, through the living room where Emma had built pillow forts, toward the back of the house where Audrey kept a guest bedroom for Emma's naps. The door was ajar. Inside, the world ended. Emma lay on the bed, her small body too still, her lips blue. Prescription bottles scattered on the nightstand. Audrey's medication for anxiety and insomnia, an empty juice box. The room smelled sickeningly sweet. Rex's legs gave out. He collapsed beside the bed, reaching for Emma's hand. It was cold. Behind him, Officer Maddox was calling for medical support, for detectives, his voice distant as if underwater. Gene Downs was securing the scene, already treating it as what it was, a crime scene. But Rex heard none of it. His entire world had collapsed into this single point. His daughter, gone, in his sister's house, surrounded by pills. The questions came later after the paramedics confirmed what Rex already knew, after the detectives arrived, after they tried to gently pull him away from Emma's body. "Where's my sister?" Rex's voice was hollow. Detective Chad Browning, a heavy-set man with sympathetic eyes, exchanged glances with his partner. "Mr. Weber, we're trying to locate Audrey McLean now. Her phone is going to voicemail. Do you know where she might be?" "No." Rex's mind was fracturing, unable to process. "She was supposed to be here. She's always here on Thursdays." "Where is she? Where's Lorraine?" "We've called your wife. She's on her way." But something in Browning's tone made Rex look up sharply. "What aren't you telling me?" Browning hesitated. "Mr. Weber, we need to ask you some questions. About your sister. About your daughter's care arrangements. About," he paused, "about your marriage." Chapter 2. Foundations Crumble. The police station's interview room was designed to be neutral, but Rex saw it with an architect's eye. No windows, harsh overhead lighting, furniture bolted to the floor. A box meant to contain and control. He sat across from Detective Browning and a female detective who'd introduced herself as Charlene Becker from the Major Crimes Unit. Major crimes, because his daughter's death wasn't an accident. "Mr. Weber, I know this is an impossibly difficult time," Browning began, his voice carrying practiced gentleness. "But we need to understand what happened. When did you last see Emma?" "This morning, 7:45. I dropped her at Audrey's on my way to work." Rex's voice sounded mechanical to his own ears. "Emma had her backpack, purple, with butterflies. She was excited because Audrey promised to make cookies." "And your wife?" "Lorraine left for work before me. Around 7:30. She's a program coordinator at the Portland Arts Coalition." Becker made notes. "Did Lorraine usually drop Emma at your sister's house?" "Sometimes. We alternated." Rex paused. "Why does that matter?" "We're building a timeline," Browning said. "When did you last speak to Audrey?" "Last night. Around 9 p.m. Confirming today's pickup. Everything was normal." Rex's hands clenched. "Where is she? Where's my sister?" The detectives exchanged looks. Becker leaned forward. "Mr. Weber, we located Audrey's car at Portland International Airport. Long-term parking. She and Dennis Olson boarded a flight to Cancun this morning at 11 a.m. The words made no sense. "That's impossible. Dennis was flying to Phoenix, and Audrey was watching Emma. We've confirmed both passengers checked in. They used tickets purchased 3 weeks ago." Browning slid a document across the table printouts of airline confirmations. "Did you know about this trip?" "No." Rex stared at the papers, his mind reeling. "Audrey wouldn't leave. Not without telling me. Not with Emma." His voice broke. "Mr. Weber, we need to ask directly." Becker's tone sharpened. "Did your sister have any reason to harm Emma?" "What? No." Audrey loved Emma. She'd never. But even as he said it, Rex's mind was cataloging anomalies. The changed locks, the pills, the secret flight. This doesn't make sense. We agree, Browning said quietly. Which is why we need to understand the full picture. Tell us about your marriage. The shift in topic jarred Rex. What does that have to do with? Please, Mr. Weber. Everything is connected. So Rex talked. About Lorraine's recent distance. The secret phone calls. The changed behavior. As he spoke, he watched the detective's expressions shift, not surprise, but confirmation. Mr. Weber, Becker said carefully. We've examined your sister's house. We found evidence that suggests Audrey wasn't acting alone in this. She produced an evidence bag containing a cell phone. This was hidden in Audrey's bedroom. It's a burner phone with only 3 numbers in the call log. One is your sister, one is Dennis Olson, and the third? Becker's pause was answer enough. Your wife, Lorraine. The room tilted. You're saying Lorraine and Audrey. We're saying they've been in frequent contact on this phone for the past 2 months. Daily calls, often lasting hours. The last call was this morning at 9:15 a.m., 45 minutes before Audrey and Dennis left for the airport. Rex's mind worked through the implications like he was analyzing a structural failure. The changed locks meant he wasn't supposed to get in today. Audrey and Dennis fleeing to Mexico. Lorraine's involvement. And Emma. They killed my daughter. The words emerged flat. Dead. We're investigating, Browning began. They killed my daughter to hurt me. Understanding crystallized, sharp, and agonizing. Lorraine wanted out of the marriage. But divorcing me, fighting for custody that would take time, money, lawyers. This way, Emma's gone, and Audrey takes the blame while Lorraine plays the grieving mother. Becker's expression confirmed he was close to the truth. Mr. Weber, we've obtained warrants for phone records and financial statements. We'll find the evidence. But right now, we need you to stay calm and... The interview room door opened. Lorraine stood there, flanked by a uniformed officer. Her face, a mask of grief. Rex. Oh my God. They told me about Emma. She moved toward him, arms outstretched. Rex stood so abruptly. His chair clattered backward. Don't touch me. Lorraine froze, confusion flickering across her features. What? Rex, we need each other right now. Officer Maddox found Emma 2 hours ago. Where were you? I was at work, Rex. They called me, and I came straight here. Your phone went to voicemail. Multiple times. Lorraine's eyes darted to the detectives. I was in a meeting. My phone was on silent. Her voice carried the right notes of distress. But Rex heard the falseness now, like a beam that looked solid but was rotten inside. Mrs. Weber, Browning interjected. We'd like to ask you some questions. Separately. Of course. Anything to help find out what happened to our daughter. Lorraine's performance was flawless, the concerned mother, the devastated wife. But Rex saw her glance at the evidence bag containing the burner phone, saw the microscopic tightening around her eyes. She knew. She'd always known. Becker escorted Lorraine to another interview room. Browning turned back to Rex. We're bringing in forensics. We'll examine everything, the pills, Emma's stomach contents, security footage from your sister's neighborhood. But I need to be straight with you, Mr. Weber. This kind of case, it's complicated. Proving conspiracy, especially if Audrey's fled the country. How long until you can arrest Lorraine? We need evidence. Real, solid, prosecutable evidence. And even then, if she gets a good lawyer. Browning didn't finish, but Rex understood. The justice system was a structure, built on rules and procedures and reasonable doubt. It was designed to protect the innocent, but it also protected the clever, the calculating, the ones who understood how to exploit its load-bearing walls. Rex had spent his career understanding structures. He knew where the weight went, where the weak points were, how everything connected. He knew that sometimes, when a building was too damaged, trying to save it only led to further collapse. Sometimes, you had to demolish and rebuild. Can I go? Rex asked. Browning hesitated, then nodded. We'll need you available for follow-up questions. And Mr. Weber, don't do anything. I won't. Rex stood, his movements controlled. I just want to go home. It was the truth, just not the whole truth. Because as Rex walked out of the police station into the cold November night, his mind was already working, already planning. already understanding that the justice system might fail him. But he wouldn't fail Emma. Chapter 3. Blueprints of Revenge. Rex didn't go home. Instead, he drove to his office, a converted firehouse in southeast Portland that housed Weber and Associates on the second floor. At 11 p.m., the building was empty, exactly as he needed. He climbed the iron stairs to his private office, a space lined with drafting tables, architectural models, and filing cabinets containing every project he'd worked on for the past decade. But Rex didn't head for those. Instead, he unlocked a storage room that housed his personal archives, projects from his early career, including several he'd never publicized. Before Rex had gone legitimate, before he'd built a respectable firm, he'd worked for Art Emery, a developer who specialized in properties that existed in legal gray zones. Emery had taught Rex more than architecture. He taught him how systems could be manipulated, how documentation could be made to disappear, how the right connections could turn problems into solutions. Rex pulled out a specific file from 2012, the Riverside Project. It had been Emery's last venture before retiring to Costa Rica, a luxury condo conversion that had required making several city inspectors overlook code violations, a few union representatives forget labor complaints, and one particularly stubborn environmental activist named Henry Poole decide that moving to Seattle was preferable to continuing his protests. Poole's relocation hadn't been voluntary. It had been the result of carefully orchestrated pressure, financial leverage, manufactured scandals, and what Emery had called architectural persuasion. Rex had witnessed it all, had learned how to dismantle someone's life with the same precision he used to design buildings. He'd never wanted to use those skills, but he'd never had a dead daughter before. Rex opened his laptop and began constructing a different kind of blueprint, not for a building, but for justice. Real justice, the kind that couldn't be appealed or dismissed on technicalities. His phone buzzed. Detective Browning. Mr. Weber, wanted to update you. We've gotten preliminary toxicology on Emma. Significant levels of zolpidem and alprazolam, both medications prescribed to your sister. We're ruling this a homicide. And Lorraine? A pause. Her lawyer arrived. We had to let her go. But we're building the case, Mr. Weber. I promise you. I understand. Thank you, Detective. Rex ended the call. Lorraine was out. Protected by lawyers, by the presumption of innocence, by a system designed to move slowly and carefully. While Emma was in a morgue, Rex pulled up another file on his computer, Lorraine's digital footprint. Over their marriage, he'd maintained their shared cloud storage, had admin access to their family accounts. He'd never invaded her privacy before, but privacy was a luxury granted to people who didn't murder children. He found it within 30 minutes, a hidden folder in their cloud storage. Password protected, but using Lorraine's mother's maiden name combined with her birth year predictable. Inside were hundreds of text messages, screenshots of conversations with someone named M. Rex opened them and read. M. When are you leaving him? Lorraine. Soon. I just need the timing to be right. M. You've been saying that for 6 months. Lorraine. I know. But if I file for divorce, Rex will fight me for custody. You know how he is methodical, obsessive. He'll make it ugly. M. So, what's the alternative? Lorraine. I'm working on it. Trust me. The messages continued, growing more explicit. M was pushing for commitment. Lorraine was promising, stalling, planning. Then, 2 months ago, the tone shifted. Lorraine. Talk to Audrey. She's in. M. Are you serious? Lorraine. She owes me. And Dennis is desperate for money. They'll handle it. M. Handle what exactly? Lorraine. Better if you don't know details. Just know that in a few weeks, I'll be free. We'll be together. M. What about Emma? Lorraine. What about her? Rex's hands trembled. He forced himself to keep reading. M. I'm not sure I can do this knowing. Lorraine. Don't get cold feet now. She's Rex's problem, not ours. After this, she won't be anyone's problem. M. Jesus Christ. Lorraine. Lorraine, I need you with me on this. Are you with me? M. Yes. The messages ended 3 days ago. Rex took screenshots of everything, backed them up to 3 separate locations, then continued digging. He found financial records next. Lorraine had opened a separate bank account 6 months ago, one Rex hadn't known about. Deposits came from her paycheck normal, but there were also regular wire transfers to an account in Dennis Olson's name, $2,000 monthly for 3 months. Then a final payment of $15,000 2 weeks ago. Payment for murder. Rex also found travel documents. Tickets to Barcelona for Lorraine and M, dated for 3 weeks from now. One-way tickets. A new life, purchased with Emma's death. But who was M? Rex searched Lorraine's social media. Her email contacts, cross-referencing against the burner phone records the police had mentioned. The number was registered to a prepaid account, but the call patterns matched someone Lorraine interacted with regularly. Then Rex found it, a LinkedIn message from 8 months ago. Hey Lorraine, so good to see you at the gallery opening. We should grab coffee and catch up properly. Maxwell Brennan. Maxwell Brennan. Rex pulled up his profile. Age 31. Commercial photographer. Divorced. Lived in Portland's Pearl District. His Instagram showed artistic black and white shots, and several photos from gallery openings where Lorraine appeared in the background. Rex dug deeper. Brennan rented a loft studio in a building Rex recognized he consulted on its renovation 5 years ago. He still had contacts with the building management. One phone call to Alan Francis, the property manager and an old poker buddy, confirmed what Rex suspected. Maxwell Brennan. Unit 304. Lease up for renewal in January. Recent noise complaints from neighbors about loud arguments with a female visitor. Rex had his target. But targeting wasn't enough. He needed precision. He needed a plan that would dismantle not just Lorraine and Maxwell, but Audrey and Dennis too. He needed them to suffer the way Emma had suffered. The way he was suffering. An eye for an eye would leave the world blind, the saying went. But Rex didn't care about the world. He cared about Emma. And if he had to blind everyone responsible for her death to find justice, so be it. He opened a new document and began to design. Not a building this time, but a trap. A structure of revenge, so carefully constructed that every person who touched Emma's murder would collapse under the weight of their own guilt. By dawn, Rex had his blueprint. Now he just needed to build it. Chapter 4. Laying the groundwork. The funeral was held on a gray Saturday, 5 days after Emma's death. Rex stood at the graveside in a black suit that fit perfectly but felt like a cage. The turnout was substantial colleagues from his firm, clients, friends, Lorraine's family. People spoke in hushed tones about tragedy, about accidents, about the unbearable pain of losing a child. No one mentioned murder. The police had kept that detail quiet while building their case. Lorraine stood beside Rex, dressed in elegant black, her performance of grief Oscar-worthy. She dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, leaned on her mother for support, accepted condolences with trembling hands. Rex watched her with the detachment of an engineer studying a faulty component. Maxwell Brennan attended, Rex noted. He stood at the back, appropriately somber, a colleague offering support to a grieving acquaintance. Their eyes never met, but Rex saw Lorraine's gaze flicker toward Maxwell twice. Brief, controlled, but confirming. After the service, people gathered at Rex's house for the reception. Lorraine had organized everything: caterers, flowers, a tasteful photo display of Emma's short life. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, accepting sympathies, telling stories about their daughter. Rex slipped away to his study and locked the door. From his safe, he retrieved a small device he'd purchased from a contact of Art Emery's, a man named Tom Wolfe who specialized in surveillance equipment. The device was a cellular interceptor, capable of cloning SIM data and monitoring communications. Rex had visited Maxwell's building 3 nights ago. Getting inside had been simple. He still had master access codes from the renovation project. He'd entered Maxwell's loft while the photographer was at a nightclub, confirmed via Instagram posts, and installed micro cameras in 3 locations: the living room, the bedroom, and the home office. Now, Rex activated his laptop and pulled up the feeds. Maxwell's loft was empty, but Rex had recordings from the past 5 days. He scrolled through, looking for specific interactions. There. 2 days ago, 11 p.m. Maxwell and Lorraine in his bedroom. Rex forced himself to watch, to listen. "You shouldn't be here," Maxwell said, pulling Lorraine close. "People will notice. I needed to see you. The police are asking questions." Lorraine's voice was strained. "What kind of questions?" "About my relationship with Audrey." About my marriage. They're looking at phone records. The burner phone? I dumped it in the river the day Emma died. But they might have already pulled the records. Maxwell pulled back. Jesus, Lorraine, what if they connect us? They won't. We've been careful. And even if they suspect, suspicion isn't proof. Lorraine's voice hardened. Just stick to the story. You're a friend offering support. Nothing more. And Audrey? In Mexico by now. No extradition treaty. She and Dennis are safe. What about us? The Barcelona tickets? We wait. Let things settle. Then we go. Maxwell hesitated. I knew you wanted out of your marriage, but I didn't think you'd actually. Don't. Lorraine's voice went cold. Don't start questioning this now. We talked about it. You agreed. I agreed to help you leave Rex. Not to Maxwell's voice dropped to a whisper. Not to kill a kid. Lorraine slapped him. The sound was sharp in the quiet loft. Don't you dare put this on me. You knew what was necessary. You knew Emma was the chain keeping me trapped. I gave you the choice to walk away, and you didn't take it. Because I love you. Then act like it. Keep your mouth shut. Play the supportive friend. And in a few weeks, we'll be in Spain starting our new life. Lorraine softened, touching Maxwell's face. I did this for us, Max. So, we could be together. Rex stopped the recording. He'd heard enough. Maxwell Brennan was weak, compromised by love and cowardice, complicit but conflicted. That made him the pressure point. The crack in the foundation. Rex compiled the recordings, encrypted them, and uploaded them to a secure server. Insurance. For now. Then he reviewed the rest of his plan. Phase 1. Isolate the targets. This was already underway. Audrey and Dennis were in Mexico. Lorraine thought she was safe. Maxwell was anxious but committed. Phase 2. Apply pressure. This required precision and timing. Phase 3. Watch them destroy each other. Rex's phone buzzed. Detective Browning. Mr. Weber. Wanted to update you. We've officially filed charges against Audrey McLean and Dennis Olson for first-degree murder and conspiracy. We're working with Mexican authorities for extradition, but it's complicated. Dennis has been there before on layovers. He knows the system. What about Lorraine? We're still building the case. The phone records show contact, but her lawyer is arguing it was innocent that she was confiding in Audrey about marital problems, without concrete evidence of conspiracy. I understand. Rex kept his voice neutral. Do what you can, detective. After ending the call, Rex opened a new browser window and accessed an encrypted messaging platform. He typed a message to Tom Wolfe. Need a courier. Discreet. Time-sensitive. The reply came within minutes. Price? $10,000. When and where? Rex provided details. The package would be delivered to the Mexican Police Department, handling Audrey and Dennis's case anonymously, containing specific evidence that would make extradition inevitable. But not yet. Timing was everything. Next, Rex called Alan Francis, the property manager. Alan, it's Rex Weber. Rex? Man, I'm so sorry about Emma. I can't even imagine. Thank you. Listen, I need a favor. It's about Unit 304 inches the Pearl Building. A pause. Brennan's place? Yeah. I heard he's been having issues. Noise complaints? Some. Nothing major. Why? I'm considering recommending that building to a client. Just want to make sure it's professionally managed. Can you send me the complaint logs? Just for my records. Alan hesitated. I'm not supposed to share tenant information. I designed that building, Alan. I referred you for the property manager position. I'm not asking you to do anything illegal, just send me public complaint records. Yeah, okay. I'll email them over. Thanks. I owe you. The complaint logs would give Rex leverage proof of disturbances, potentially evidence of Lorraine's visits if any neighbors had mentioned seeing her. Small pieces, but Rex knew that structures failed not from one catastrophic event, but from accumulated stresses. That night, after the reception ended and the house fell silent, Lorraine approached Rex in the kitchen. She removed her heels, her carefully composed expression softening into something meant to seem vulnerable. Rex, we need to talk about moving forward. About healing. Rex looked at her, really looked. He saw the woman he'd married, the mother of his child, the person he'd trusted with everything. And he saw the monster underneath, the calculating predator who'd orchestrated Emma's death. What did you have in mind? He asked carefully. Grief counseling. Together. I think it would help us process, but this. She reached for his hand. Rex let her take it, felt her fingers intertwine with his. Warm and familiar and poisonous. That's a good idea. Relief flickered across Lorraine's face. She thought she'd fooled him. Thought he was still the devoted husband, too devastated to suspect, too broken to fight. Let her think that. I've already found a therapist, Lorraine continued. Dr. Janice Walton. She specializes in family trauma. I made us an appointment for Thursday. Thursday works. Rex squeezed her hand gently, selling the performance. Thank you for thinking of this. For thinking of us. Lorraine smiled, and for a moment, Rex saw genuine relief. She needed him compliant, cooperative, because a grieving husband asking questions would complicate her escape plan. After Lorraine went to bed, Rex remained in the kitchen, staring at Emma's drawings on the refrigerator, butterflies and rainbows and stick figure families. His daughter's entire world, reduced to construction paper and crayons. He pulled down one drawing Emma had made it for his birthday. A house with a red door, 2 tall figures, 1 small figure, and a yellow sun. My family written in wobbly letters across the top. Rex folded it carefully and placed it in his wallet. A reminder. A reason. Then he returned to his study and continued building his trap. Chapter 5. Pressure Points. Dr. Janice Walton's office occupied a converted brownstone in northwest Portland, all earth tones and soft lighting designed to project calm. Rex sat on a leather couch beside Lorraine, both of them playing their roles perfectly. Grief affects couples differently, Doctor. Walton said, her voice professionally soothing. It's important to acknowledge that there's no right way to mourn, but there are healthy and unhealthy patterns. Tell me, how have you two been supporting each other? Lorraine spoke first, her words carefully measured. It's been hard. Rex has been so withdrawn. I understand we all process differently, but I feel like I'm losing both my daughter and my husband. Rex noted the deflection, the subtle positioning of herself as the abandoned spouse. I've been trying to stay functional, he said quietly. Work helps. Keeping busy. And that's natural, Dr. Walton said. But Rex, avoiding the pain doesn't make it go away. It just postpones the reckoning. I know. Rex met the therapist's eyes. But if I stop moving, if I let myself really feel it, I'm afraid I won't be able to function at all. It was true enough to sell. Lorraine reached for his hand, and Rex let her, even as his skin crawled at her touch. The session continued an hour of carefully orchestrated theater. Lorraine portrayed the concerned wife. Rex, the traumatized husband. Dr. Walton provided tissue boxes and validated feelings and suggested coping mechanisms. When they left, Lorraine seemed satisfied. That was good, she said in the parking lot. I think Dr. Walton can really help us. Yeah. Rex unlocked his truck. Same time next week? Absolutely. They drove separately, Lorraine to run errands. Rex allegedly back to his office. Instead, Rex drove to a coffee shop 3 blocks from Maxwell Brennan's loft and waited. At 2:47 p.m., Lorraine's car pulled into Maxwell's building. She used a key card to access the garage. She had a copy, Rex noted. More evidence. Rex waited 30 minutes, then sent an anonymous text to Maxwell's phone from a burner. She's using you. Check her laptop. Password is Payne2019. Look at the files marked insurance. 3 minutes later, Rex's surveillance feed showed Maxwell opening his laptop, Lorraine's laptop, which she'd left on his desk. Rex watched Maxwell type the password, navigate to the files. The files Rex had planted the previous night while Lorraine and Maxwell were at dinner. Files containing fabricated evidence that Lorraine was planning to frame Maxwell for Emma's murder. Fake emails discussing how to redirect police attention. Manufactured bank records showing payments from Maxwell's account to Audrey. Doctored text messages. All false. All damning. Rex watched Maxwell's face pale as he read. Watched him glance toward the bedroom where Lorraine was showering. Watched the doubt seed itself. Perfect. Phase 2 was accelerating. Over the next week, Rex maintained his grieving husband routine while systematically dismantling his target's foundations. He sent the Mexican police an anonymous package containing proof of Audrey and Dennis's location, flight records, and bank statements showing Dennis's payoff. Mexican authorities raided their hotel. Audrey and Dennis were arrested. Extradition proceedings initiated. Leaked carefully edited surveillance footage to Detective Browning showing Lorraine entering and leaving Maxwell's loft multiple times over the past 2 months. The footage didn't prove murder conspiracy, but it established the affair, contradicting Lorraine's claims of being a devoted wife. Arranged for Maxwell to receive a second anonymous message. The police know. She's going to blame you. Save yourself. Contacted Lorraine's employer at the Portland Arts Coalition with an anonymous tip about financial irregularities, specifically that Lorraine had been embezzling small amounts to fund her secret bank account. The amounts were real, Rex had confirmed via her bank records, but the embezzlement claim was Rex's fabrication. It didn't matter. The resulting internal investigation would destroy Lorraine's credibility. Each action was calculated, timed, designed to create maximum psychological pressure. Rex understood structural stress, how small forces, applied at precise points, could bring down entire buildings. He was bringing down Lorraine's world the same way. On Wednesday evening, Rex's surveillance feed captured the first major crack. Maxwell confronted Lorraine. "Did you set me up?" he demanded, shoving the laptop toward her. Lorraine stared at the screen, her face unreadable. "What are you talking about?" "These files. These emails. They make it look like I killed Emma. That's insane." "I don't know what." Lorraine's eyes narrowed. "Where did you get my password?" "Someone texted me. Told me to look." "Who?" "I don't know. A blocked number." Lorraine grabbed the laptop, scrolling through files. Rex watched her mind work, saw the moment she realized someone was playing them. "This is bullshit. These files aren't real. Someone's planting evidence." "How do you know?" "Because I didn't write these emails, Maxwell. Someone's trying to turn us against each other. Or you wrote them and forgot." Maxwell's voice rose. "You're smart enough to frame me. You're smart enough to make me the fall guy while you skip to Barcelona. You're being paranoid." "Am I?" "Because my friend at the police department told me they're asking about me. About my relationship with you. They know about the affair." "Lorraine." Rex saw Lorraine's composure crack. "What?" "Someone sent them footage. Of you coming to my place. Multiple times. That doesn't prove anything. It proves we lied. And if they start digging, if they find out I knew about your plan," Maxwell's hand shook, "I could go to prison." "You won't. Just stay calm." "I can't do this." Maxwell backed away. "I'm done. We're done." "You don't mean that." "I do. Get out. And don't come back." Lorraine's expression hardened. "You weak piece of shit. I risked everything for us. You killed a kid. I helped you cover it up because I was stupid and in love, but I'm not going down for this." Maxwell pointed to the door. "Get out." Lorraine left. Rex watched her drive away, her hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. The foundation was crumbling. Chapter 6. Controlled Demolition. The next morning, Maxwell Brennan walked into the police station and asked to speak to Detective Browning. Rex received a text from his contact inside the department, an old client named Brian Spaulding, who owed Rex several favors. "Brennan is talking. Offering testimony against LW in exchange for immunity." Rex read the message twice, then deleted it. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Maxwell's testimony would be the final nail in Lorraine's coffin. He'd provide evidence of the conspiracy, confirm Lorraine's involvement, describe her cold calculation. The prosecution would have motive, means, and opportunity. They'd have a witness willing to confirm the affair, the planning, the payment to Audrey. Lorraine would be arrested within days. But Rex wanted more than prison. Prison was clean, bureaucratic, impersonal. Prison didn't make Lorraine feel the terror Emma must have felt. It didn't make her understand the totality of what she destroyed. So Rex initiated Phase 3. He sent Lorraine a text from his burner phone. Maxwell told the police everything. "They're coming for you." Then, he waited. The response came within minutes. "Who is this?" Rex didn't reply. Instead, he watched via the camera he'd installed in his own house, positioned to monitor the living room and kitchen, installed under the guise of home security. Lorraine arrived home 20 minutes later, frantic. She immediately began packing clothes, documents, cash from the safe Rex didn't know she knew about. She was running. "Perfect." Rex sent another message. "Running makes you guilty. The airports are watching. Borders are flagged. You can't escape." Lorraine's phone clattered to the floor. Rex watched her collapse onto the couch, head in hands. She was trapped, and she knew it. But Rex wasn't done. He accessed Lorraine's email and sent a message to Audrey McLean's lawyer in Mexico. Audrey had retained counsel after her arrest. From Lorraine Downs. I can't let you take the fall alone. I'm prepared to testify that Dennis acted alone, that you were coerced. In exchange, I need you to confirm that Rex knew about our plan, that he was involved but turned on us when Emma actually died. It's our only way out. L. The email was calculated poison. Audrey would receive it, believe Lorraine was trying to make a deal, and likely respond with rage, possibly incriminating herself further. At minimum, it would destroy any remaining trust between them. Rex also sent an email from Maxwell's account to Lorraine. From Maxwell Brennan. I told them everything, but I made sure to emphasize that you manipulated me, that you threatened to ruin my career if I didn't help. It's your word against mine, and I have emails to prove you were controlling this whole thing. You're fucked. M. Then Rex sent one more message, this one from Audrey's account to Lorraine. From Audrey McLean. You selfish bitch. Dennis and I are facing life in prison because of you. I'm telling them everything, how you planned Emma's murder, how you paid us, how you wanted her dead so you could run away with your photographer boyfriend. I hope you rot. A. Rex sent all 3 emails within 10 minutes, then sat back and watched the chaos unfold. Lorraine's phone began buzzing calls from her lawyer, from her mother, from friends who'd seen the news that Maxwell Brennan was cooperating with police. She ignored them all, instead opening her laptop and frantically deleting files, clearing browser histories, destroying evidence. Too late. Rex had copies of everything. At 6 p.m., Detective Browning and 4 uniformed officers arrived at Rex's house. Rex watched via his phone as they knocked, announced themselves, and entered. Lorraine let them in, still playing the cooperative wife. Lorraine Downs, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, first-degree murder, and child endangerment. Rex listened to Lorraine's Miranda rights being read, heard her protests. This is insane. I didn't do anything. Rex, tell them. Watched her being led away in handcuffs. Only then did Rex allow himself a small, cold smile. The trap had worked perfectly. Maxwell, Audrey, and Lorraine had all turned on each other, exactly as he'd designed. The prosecution would have multiple witnesses, mountains of evidence, and defendants eager to blame anyone but themselves. But Rex still wasn't satisfied. Because Emma was still dead. Because prison, even life in prison, didn't balance the scales. So Rex initiated the final phase of his plan. The phase he'd been building toward from the beginning. The phase that would ensure true justice. Chapter 7. The Reckoning. The trial began 4 months later. In March, Portland's courthouse became a media circus. Reporters camped outside, camera crews broadcasting live updates, true crime podcasters dissecting every revelation. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. They had Maxwell Brennan's testimony, describing in detail how Lorraine had planned Emma's murder, recruited Audrey and Dennis, and paid them to execute the plan. Phone records showing hundreds of calls between Lorraine, Audrey, and the burner phones. Financial records proving the payments from Lorraine to Dennis. Text messages, the real ones Rex had found, plus strategic leaks of the fabricated ones that Lorraine couldn't disprove without admitting to other crimes. Forensic evidence from Audrey's house, showing the pills used to kill Emma. Testimony from Dennis Olson, who'd also cut a deal, confirming that Audrey had administered the fatal dose under Lorraine's direction. Lorraine's defense was weak. She claimed she was being framed, that Rex had orchestrated everything, that Maxwell and Audrey were lying. But she had no evidence, and her credibility had been shredded by the revelation of her affair, her secret bank account, and her planned flight to Spain. Audrey McLean's trial ran concurrently. She tried to blame Dennis, then Lorraine, then claimed diminished capacity due to mental illness. The jury didn't buy it. Dennis Olson testified against both women, painting himself as a desperate man manipulated by his wife and Lorraine. He received 20 years in exchange for cooperation. Maxwell Brennan was granted immunity for his testimony. But his life was destroyed, his photography business collapsed, his reputation ruined, death threats flooded his social media. He'd escaped prison, but not consequences. Rex attended every day of the trial, sitting in the front row, watching Lorraine squirm on the witness stand. He met her eyes once, during her testimony, and let her see the truth there, that he knew everything, had known from the beginning, had orchestrated her destruction as methodically as she'd orchestrated Emma's death. The recognition in Lorraine's eyes was satisfying, but not enough. On the trial's final day, as closing arguments concluded, Rex left the courthouse and drove to a storage unit he'd rented under a shell company. Inside were items he'd been collecting for months. Detailed schematics of the women's correctional facility where Lorraine would be sent if convicted. Profiles of inmates with connections to people Rex had helped over the years, people who owed him favors. Instructions for contacts inside the prison system. People who could ensure Lorraine's incarceration would be as hellish as legally possible. Rex had spent months learning the prison ecosystem, understanding its hierarchies, its economies, its violence. He'd identified which guards were corruptible, which inmates controlled which blocks, which scenarios would make Lorraine's life unbearable without being traced back to him. He'd designed a structure of suffering, one that would last decades. But as Rex sat in the storage unit, surrounded by his instruments of revenge, he felt hollow. Emma was still gone. No amount of Lorraine's suffering would bring her back. For the first time since Emma's death, Rex allowed himself to truly grieve. He sobbed, alone in the storage unit, mourning not just his daughter but the person he'd been before her death, the architect, who built things, not destroyed them. When the tears subsided, Rex made a decision. He gathered all the materials, the prison schematics, the contact lists, the revenge plans, and loaded them into his truck. Then he drove to a remote location outside Portland and burned everything. Lorraine would go to prison. That was enough. She'd spend decades knowing she'd destroyed her life for nothing, that Maxwell had betrayed her, that Audrey hated her, that every person she'd trusted had turned on her. That was justice. Not the justice Rex had planned, but justice nonetheless. The verdict came the next day. Guilty on all counts. Lorraine received life without parole. Audrey received the same. Dennis's 20-year sentence stood. Rex didn't celebrate. He simply nodded, stood, and walked out of the courthouse. Chapter 8. Reconstruction. 6 months after the trial, Rex sold his house. Too many memories. Too many ghosts. He couldn't walk through Emma's room without seeing her on that bed in Audrey's house. Couldn't cook in the kitchen without remembering Lorraine's performances of grief. He bought a smaller place in the suburbs, a mid-century modern that needed renovation. He threw himself into the work, stripping walls, redesigning layouts, rebuilding from the foundation up. His firm had survived the scandal barely. Some clients had dropped him, too much negative publicity, but others had stayed loyal. Brian Spaulding, the detective who'd helped Rex, had become a friend. They had coffee occasionally, never discussing the case, just talking about architecture and life and healing. One afternoon, Brian brought a woman named Erin Padilla to meet Rex. Erin ran a nonprofit that built playgrounds in underserved neighborhoods, and she needed an architect to donate time for a new project. "I know you're busy," Brian said, "but I thought of you. This is exactly the kind of work Emma would have loved." Rex looked at the project plans: a community playground with accessible equipment, sensory gardens, and reading nooks. Emma would have loved it. "I'm in," Rex said. Working on the playground gave Rex purpose beyond revenge and grief. He designed structures for joy, for children's laughter, for life. He met families, heard their stories, saw their kids running and playing in spaces he'd created. Slowly, painfully, Rex began to rebuild himself. He visited Emma's grave every Sunday, bringing fresh flowers and talking to her about his week. He told her about the playground, about the kids who'd use it, about how he was trying to honor her memory by creating something good. He never mentioned Lorraine. That chapter was closed. One Sunday, as Rex sat beside Emma's headstone, he noticed another grave nearby, freshly dug, flowers still bright. The headstone read, "Beloved son and brother." Rex recognized the name. Gene Downs, the young officer who'd been at Audrey's house the day Emma died. He'd been killed in a car accident 3 weeks ago. Officer Jackie Maddox stood nearby, placing flowers. "Officer Maddox," Rex said quietly. Maddox turned, recognition flickering. "Mr. Weber, I didn't expect to see you here. I come every week." Maddox nodded toward Gene's grave. He was my partner. Good kid. 23 years old. His voice cracked. They stood in silence for a moment. Two men mourning. Two lives touched by loss. Does it get easier? Maddox asked. Rex considered lying, offering comfort. But he respected Maddox too much. No. You just get better at carrying it. Maddox nodded. That's what I figured. They talked for a while about Jean, about Emma, about the randomness of tragedy. When they parted, Maddox shook Rex's hand. For what it's worth, Mr. Weber, I'm glad they convicted her. I'm glad you got justice. Rex nodded. Thank you. But as he drove home, Rex thought about Maddox's words. Justice? Was that what he'd gotten? Lorraine was in prison. Yes. Audrey too. Dennis would serve his time. Maxwell's life was ruined. But Emma was still dead. And Rex had spent 6 months becoming someone he barely recognized: a manipulator, a schemer, a man who'd built traps instead of buildings. That night, Rex opened his laptop and began a new project, a memorial scholarship in Emma's name, for children pursuing architecture or art. He funded it with money from selling the house, from liquidating accounts, from everything he could spare. If he couldn't bring Emma back, he'd make sure her name created opportunities for others. Chapter 9. Foundations. 2 years after Emma's death, Rex stood at the opening of Emma's Playground, a sprawling community space in southeast Portland, featuring everything he designed: accessible equipment, sensory gardens, reading nooks, and a central plaza with a bronze plaque. Emma Weber Memorial Playground. In loving memory of a daughter who brought joy to everyone she met, may this space honor her spirit. The ceremony drew hundreds of families from the neighborhood, city officials, donors, volunteers. Aaron Padilla spoke about Emma's legacy, about how one tragedy had inspired something beautiful. Rex didn't speak. He simply watched children playing, heard their laughter, saw parents smiling. This was his answer to Lorraine. Not revenge, not destruction, but creation, building something that would outlast all of them. After the ceremony, as the crowd dispersed, Rex noticed a woman watching from a distance. She looked familiar. Gladys Payne, Emma's kindergarten teacher. Mr. Weber, she said, approaching carefully. I hope I'm not intruding. Not at all, Miss Payne. I wanted to tell you. Emma talked about you constantly. About how you built beautiful buildings, how you could make anything. She was so proud of you. Gladys smiled sadly. She'd be proud of this too. Rex felt his throat tighten. Thank you. I also wanted to ask, I'm starting an after-school art program, teaching kids about architecture and design. I wondered if you consider being a guest speaker sometime, showing them what's possible. Rex thought about Emma, about her drawings on the refrigerator, about the future she'd never have, but also about the futures he could help shape for other children. I'd be honored, he said. Over the following months, Rex found a new rhythm. He worked on his firm's projects, volunteered with Aaron's nonprofit, spoke at Gladys's after-school program. He dated occasionally, tentatively, not looking for replacement but for connection. He never forgot Emma. He thought about her every day, carried her drawing in his wallet, visited her grave weekly. But he also learned to live with the grief instead of being consumed by it. One evening, 3 years after the trial, Rex received a letter. The return address was Oregon State Penitentiary, the women's facility where Lorraine was incarcerated. Rex stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Rex, I know you'll probably throw this away without reading, but I had to try. I've had 3 years to think about what I did. What I destroyed. Not just Emma, but everything: our marriage, my life, other people's lives. I was selfish. I was cruel. I convinced myself that I deserved happiness, that Emma was an obstacle, that I could just erase that part of my life and start over. I was wrong. So fucking wrong. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I think about Emma every day. About her smile, her laugh, her drawings, about the fact that she's gone because of me. Prison is hell. I'm in protective custody because the other inmates know what I did. I get attacked regularly. I've lost teeth. I've been stabbed twice. The guards look the other way. I'm not asking for sympathy. I earned every bit of this. I just wanted you to know that I'm suffering, that I'll suffer for the rest of my life. That might not mean anything to you, but it's all I have to offer. I'm sorry, Rex. I'm so fucking sorry. Lorraine. Rex read the letter twice, then set it aside. He felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, no sadness. Just a vast emptiness where Lorraine used to be. He considered responding, then decided against it. Lorraine didn't deserve his words, his attention, his energy. She'd had her trial, her conviction, her consequences. Rex fed the letter into his fireplace and watched it burn. Then, he pulled out his laptop and opened the file for his newest project, a children's library in Emma's name, designed to look like a giant treehouse, with reading nooks in the branches and a central courtyard for story time. Emma would have loved it. Rex worked until midnight, sketching elevations, planning load-bearing structures, imagining the children who'd learn and play and grow in this space. He was building again. Not traps, not revenge, but real structures. Permanent ones. Meaningful ones. And for the first time since Emma's death, Rex felt something like peace. He'd never forget. He'd never stop missing her. But he'd learned to carry the weight, to distribute the load across the foundation of his life. To build something beautiful from the ruins. That was his victory. Not destroying Lorraine, but refusing to let her destroy him. Rex saved his work, closed the laptop, and walked to Emma's room, the one he'd recreated in his new house. Filled with her drawings, her toys, her memory. "I'm building you a library, Sweet Pea," he said softly. "It's going to be amazing. You'd love the reading nook in the oak tree section." The room was silent, but Rex imagined Emma's voice. "That sounds perfect, Daddy." "Yeah," Rex whispered. "It really does." He turned off the light and closed the door, leaving it slightly ajar the way Emma had always liked it. Then Rex walked downstairs, poured himself a whiskey, and stood at the window overlooking the city lights. Portland spread out before him, full of buildings he'd designed, structures he'd created, foundations he'd laid. Emma's playground was out there somewhere, lit up for evening play. Her future library would join it soon. Then, the scholarship recipients would graduate, build their own projects, create their own legacies. Emma's name would live on, not in revenge, not in pain, but in creation, in joy, in the laughter of children playing in spaces built with love. That was Rex's architecture now. That was his blueprint for healing. And as he sipped his whiskey and watched the city lights, Rex Weber, father, architect, survivor, allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, Emma would be proud. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Facade. Derek Holloway had built his life like an architect designs a fortress, methodical, precise, and seemingly impenetrable. At 38, he owned Holloway Construction, a mid-sized firm that had rebuilt half of Millbrook after the tornado 5 years ago. His calloused hands and weathered face told stories of a man who'd climbed from nothing, starting as a day laborer at 16 after his father abandoned the family. The irony wasn't lost on him that he'd spent his adult life building structures that lasted, while his marriage to Lydia crumbled in ways he was only beginning to understand. Lydia Holloway had been the crown jewel of Millbrook's social elite when Derek met her 8 years ago. Daughter of Judge Randolph Sinclair, she'd attended private schools and graduated from Northwestern with a degree she'd never used. Her blonde hair always fell perfectly, her makeup never smudged, and her smile could disarm anyone. Except Derek had noticed it never quite reached her eyes anymore. They'd married after a whirlwind romance that, in hindsight, felt more like a business transaction. Derek provided the stability and success her family expected. Lydia provided the social connections and respectability Derek's blue-collar background lacked. Their 2 children, Emma, 16, and Lucas, 14, had become pawns in an increasingly cold household where conversations centered on schedules and obligations rather than dreams or feelings. Derek had noticed the changes gradually. Lydia's late nights volunteering for charity events. Her sudden interest in yoga classes that seemed to run past their scheduled times. The way she'd started dressing differently, more provocatively, claiming it was for her own confidence. Most telling was how she'd begun criticizing everything about Derek. His clothes, his friends, his provincial interests like fishing and watching football. But Derek wasn't the type to confront without evidence. He'd learned patience during his lean years, watching and waiting for the right moment to act. In business, timing was everything. In life, he suspected, it was even more crucial. 3 weeks before the Christmas party, Derek had hired a private investigator named Rita Kowalski, a former cop with a reputation for discretion and thoroughness. What she'd uncovered was a 6-month affair with Trevor Ashford, the pretentious art gallery owner downtown. Trevor was everything Derek wasn't: smooth-talking, cultured, from old money that had never required actual work to maintain. The photographs Rita provided showed Lydia and Trevor at expensive restaurants, holding hands in his BMW, and entering the Grandview Hotel on Tuesday afternoons. But Derek wanted more than proof of infidelity. He wanted to understand the depth of Lydia's betrayal and Trevor's arrogance before he decided what to do about it. That understanding would come at the most unexpected moment, during what should have been a celebration of Derek's success. Chapter 2. The Christmas Revelation. The annual Holloway Construction Christmas Party was Derek's favorite event of the year. Unlike the stuffy charity galas Lydia dragged him to, this was a celebration with his crew, the men and women who'd helped him build something meaningful. They'd rented the ballroom at the Riverside Inn, and Derek had spared no expense on food, drinks, and bonuses for his 68 employees. Derek wore his best suit, a navy blue number Lydia had picked out, but which made him feel like he was playing dress-up. Lydia glided through the party in a red dress that cost more than most of his workers made in a week, playing the perfect wife with practiced ease. She charmed the foreman's wives, laughed at the superintendent's jokes, and generally performed the role she'd perfected over 8 years of marriage. Roland Grayson, Derek's lawyer and the closest thing he had to a best friend, had been drinking heavily since the cocktail hour began. Roland handled most of Derek's contracts and had become wealthy enough to develop both an expensive Scotch habit and a loose tongue. At 55, Roland had been through 3 divorces and claimed to have learned from each one. Derek was returning from the bathroom, walking down the narrow hallway that connected the restrooms to the main ballroom, when he heard Roland's booming voice carry over the Christmas music. "Lydia, darling, I've always wondered something," Roland said, his words slightly slurred but his tone playful. "How do you put up with such a boring husband? I mean, Derek's a good man, but he's about as exciting as watching concrete dry." Derek stopped in his tracks, hidden by the alcove near the hallway entrance. Through the gap between 2 decorative pillars, he could see Roland gesturing with a scotch glass, while Lydia stood near the appetizer table, her perfect smile faltering for just a moment before reshaping itself into something sharper. "Oh, Roland," Lydia said, her voice carrying that musical quality she used when she was about to deliver a particularly cutting remark. "Trust me, I'm working on an exit strategy. Life's too short to waste on mediocre men." The words hit Derek like a physical blow, but not because they revealed her feelings. Rita's investigation had already confirmed Lydia's dissatisfaction. What devastated him was the casual cruelty of it, the way she delivered the line with such practiced ease, as if she'd been rehearsing it. This wasn't a moment of weakness or frustration. This was calculated contempt delivered in front of his friend, at his party, surrounded by his employees. Roland laughed, completely oblivious to the venom in Lydia's response. "Well, when you do execute that exit strategy, give me a call. I could use a 4th wife who actually knows how to entertain." Lydia's laugh was like breaking glass. "I'll keep that in mind, Roland, though I might be too busy with someone who actually understands what it means to live a little." Derek understood the subtext immediately. Trevor Ashford was everything Derek wasn't: spontaneous, worldly, unconcerned with practical matters like mortgages and college funds. Trevor could whisk Lydia away for weekend trips to Chicago or surprise her with expensive jewelry, because he never had to worry about building something from nothing. Derek remained in the shadows for another few minutes, watching Lydia work the room. She moved through his employees like a predator among prey, all smiles and small talk, while mentally cataloging everything she planned to leave behind. When she approached Mike Patterson, Derek's lead foreman, and complimented his wife's dress with the same false warmth she'd just used to discuss Derek's inadequacies, Derek felt something cold and final settle in his chest. He returned to the party as if nothing had changed, playing his role as the gracious host. He thanked his employees for their hard work, praised their dedication, and promised another successful year ahead. He danced with Lydia during the slow songs, accepting compliments on what a beautiful couple they made while knowing it was all performance. When Lydia excused herself to powder her nose, Derek noticed she took her phone with her. When she returned 20 minutes later with slightly smudged lipstick and a text message excuse about the babysitter needing to leave early, Derek knew she'd been coordinating with Trevor. They stayed until the last employee left, with Derek maintaining his facade while mentally cataloging every false smile, every casual touch, every moment of the elaborate deception Lydia had constructed around their marriage. Chapter 3: The Vanishing Act. The drive home was silent except for the sound of winter wind against the windows of Derek's pickup truck. Lydia stared out the passenger side window, presumably thinking about Trevor and whatever plans they'd been making via text. Derek focused on the road, but his mind was already 3 steps ahead, calculating and planning. Their house sat on 5 acres outside Millbrook city limits, a custom-built colonial that Derek had designed and constructed as a wedding gift for Lydia. Every beam, every fixture, every detail had been chosen to create something worthy of the woman he'd thought he was marrying. Now it felt like a museum dedicated to his own naivety. The babysitter, Mrs. Chun from down the road, left quickly after they arrived. Emma and Lucas were already asleep, having spent the evening doing homework and watching Netflix. Derek stood in the doorway of each child's room, studying their faces in the dim light from the hallway. Emma looked more like Lydia every year. The same sharp cheekbones, the same blonde hair, the same unconscious arrogance, even in sleep. Lucas favored Derek's side of the family, with darker hair and the kind of solid build that suggested he'd grow into manual labor as easily as office work. Derek wondered how much they knew about their mother's afternoon activities, how much they'd figured out about the growing distance between their parents. Lydia was already in bed when Derek finished his rounds, wearing silk pajamas and pretending to read a magazine. She'd removed her makeup and pulled her hair back, transforming from the polished socialite back into the woman who shared his bed, but increasingly little else. "Good party tonight," she said without looking up from her magazine. Roland was in fine form. Derek undressed methodically, hanging his suit carefully in the closet they'd shared for 8 years. Roland drinks too much at these things. Sometimes he says things he shouldn't. "Oh, you know how he is? He doesn't mean anything by it." Lydia's voice was perfectly casual, but Derek caught the slight tension around her eyes. She was wondering how much he'd heard, how much he knew. Derek climbed into bed, maintaining the careful distance that had developed between them over recent months. "I'm thinking about taking some time off after the holidays. Maybe a long weekend, just to clear my head." "That sounds nice," Lydia said, still focused on her magazine. "Will you want company? Or is this one of your solo fishing trips?" It was a test question, Derek realized. She was hoping for solo time, so she could spend an uninterrupted weekend with Trevor. "Solo," Derek confirmed. "I need some time to think about things." Lydia's relief was subtle but visible. "Of course. You work so hard. You deserve a break." Derek lay awake long after Lydia's breathing settled into the rhythm of sleep. He wasn't planning a fishing trip. He was planning something far more comprehensive, something that would require careful preparation and flawless execution. Lydia wanted an exit strategy. Derek would give her one, but not the kind she was expecting. Over the next 3 days, Derek began laying groundwork. He transferred money from their joint accounts into business accounts Lydia couldn't access. He collected important documents, birth certificates, insurance policies, property deeds, and secured them in his office safe. He researched divorce lawyers, not to hire them, but to understand what Lydia's options would be when his plan reached its conclusion. Most importantly, Derek began documenting everything. Rita Kowalski's investigation had provided one kind of evidence, But Derek needed a broader picture. He installed software on Lydia's laptop that would track her emails and browsing history. He placed a GPS tracker on her car. He began recording phone conversations and photographing credit card statements. Derek wasn't planning a simple divorce. He was planning the complete and systematic destruction of everyone who had betrayed him. Lydia and Trevor had built their affair on the foundation of his trust and generosity. When Derek was finished, they would understand exactly what they had lost and exactly how much their betrayal would cost them. On the fourth day after the Christmas party, Derek received a call from Rita Kowalski with information that would accelerate his timeline considerably. Chapter 4. Gathering Intelligence. Rita Kowalski's call came at 6 a.m. while Derek was reviewing blueprints in his home office. The former detective's voice carried the kind of urgency that came from years of delivering bad news to people who thought they were prepared for it. Derek, we need to meet. Today. There's something about your wife and Trevor Ashford you need to know, and it's not something I want to discuss over the phone. They met at Rusty's Diner, a truck stop restaurant outside town, where Derek could be sure no one from Lydia's social circle would see them. Rita arrived carrying a manila folder thick enough to represent weeks of surveillance and investigation. Your wife and Trevor aren't just having an affair, Rita began without preamble. They're planning to disappear together. Within the next month. Derek's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. Disappear how? Rita spread photographs across the scratched table surface. Trevor's been liquidating assets for 3 weeks. He sold his gallery building to a shell corporation he controls, officially for tax purposes. He's moved most of his art collection to a storage facility in Chicago. And yesterday, your wife opened a bank account in the Cayman Islands. The photographs showed Lydia entering First National Bank with documents Derek didn't recognize, Trevor loading paintings into a moving truck, and both of them at what appeared to be a travel agency. Rita had been thorough, capturing multiple angles and timestamps that told a story of methodical preparation. How much money are we talking about? Derek asked, his voice steady despite the rage building in his chest. Trevor's liquidation will net him close to $2 million. But that's not the worst part. Rita pulled out a document that made Derek's blood run cold. Your wife forged your signature on a home equity loan 3 weeks ago. She's borrowed $800,000 against the house. Derek studied the paperwork, recognizing Lydia's careful forgery of his signature. She practiced it well enough to fool the bank, but Derek could see the subtle differences in pressure and angle that revealed the deception. The house is in both our names. How did she manage this alone? She claimed you were out of town on business and provided a notarized power of attorney. Also forged, but convincing enough for a loan officer who was probably more interested in commission than verification. Derek felt the careful control he'd maintained since the Christmas party beginning to crack. This wasn't just infidelity or even abandonment. This was theft on a scale that would destroy everything he'd built. What's their timeline? Based on their activities, I'd say they're planning to leave right after New Year's. Trevor's already got plane tickets to Switzerland with a connection to somewhere that doesn't have extradition treaties with the United States. Your wife's been researching international divorce law, specifically how to dissolve marriages when one party is residing overseas. Derek leaned back in the cracked vinyl booth, processing the scope of Lydia's betrayal. She wasn't just leaving him for another man. She was stealing his children's future, his employees' security, everything he'd spent 20 years building. The woman he'd married, loved, and trusted had been planning the systematic destruction of his life while lying in his bed every night. There's one more thing, Rita said, her voice gentler now. Trevor's been telling people around town that your business is failing, that you're leveraged beyond recovery. He's been positioning himself as Lydia's rescuer, saving her from financial ruin. The calculated nature of the lie revealed Trevor's sophisticated understanding of social dynamics. By the time Derek discovered the theft, Lydia and Trevor would be gone, and Milberg's gossip network would already have accepted the narrative that Derek Holloway had failed as both a husband and businessman. Derek paid Rita's fee and added a substantial bonus. I need you to keep monitoring them, but from a distance. I don't want them to know they've been discovered until I'm ready. What are you planning, Derek? Rita's cop instincts made her cautious about clients who seemed too calm in the face of devastating news. "I'm planning to give them exactly what they deserve," Derek replied. "But I need to be smart about it. They've been planning this for months. I need to plan better." Derek spent the rest of the day at his office, canceling meetings and rearranging his schedule. To his employees, he appeared to be handling routine year-end business. In reality, he was designing the most important project of his career, a trap sophisticated enough to catch two people who thought they were smarter than everyone around them. The first component was financial. Derek began systematically moving assets beyond Lydia's reach, using business partnerships and holding companies he'd established during his company's growth. By day's end, he'd secured the majority of his wealth, while leaving enough in accessible accounts to avoid triggering Lydia's suspicion. The second component was legal. Derek spent 2 hours with his attorney, not Roland Grayson, but a different lawyer in the next county who specialized in criminal fraud cases. The forged loan documents would be enough to prosecute Lydia for bank fraud, but Derek wanted more comprehensive charges when the time came. The third component was personal. Derek drove to his children's schools and quietly spoke with their guidance counselors, teachers, and coaches. He didn't reveal the situation, but he began laying groundwork for what would happen when their world collapsed around them. By the time Derek returned home that evening, he'd transformed from victim to architect. Lydia and Trevor had spent months planning Derek's destruction. Derek would spend the next 3 weeks planning theirs. Chapter 5: The Honey Trap. Derek's plan required Trevor and Lydia to accelerate their timeline, to make mistakes born of greed and overconfidence. The key was offering them an opportunity too tempting to refuse, something that would force them to expose themselves completely. The opportunity came in the form of the Riverside Development Project, a luxury condominium complex Derek had been considering for months. The project would require a significant investment from Holloway Construction, but the potential profits were enormous. More importantly, the project would require Derek to travel extensively over the next month, providing Trevor and Lydia with the perfect cover for their final preparations. Derek announced the project at dinner 3 days before New Year's Eve, carefully watching Lydia's reaction as he described the timeline and travel requirements. "It's a big risk," Derek said, pushing mashed potatoes around his plate while Emma texted friends and Lucas complained about his math homework. "I need to spend most of January in Portland, working with architects and city planners. But if it works out, it could set us up for life." Lydia's fork paused for just a moment before she resumed eating. "That sounds exciting, Derek, but also stressful. Are you sure you want to take on something so demanding right now?" It was perfectly performed concern, but Derek could see the calculations behind her eyes. A month of freedom to finalize arrangements with Trevor, to transfer money and prepare for their escape. "I think it's exactly what I need," Derek replied. "A chance to prove what Holloway Construction can really accomplish." Over the next 2 days, Derek made a show of preparing for the Portland trip. He booked flights, reserved a hotel room, and told his employees about the expanded timeline for his absence. Everything was designed to give Lydia and Trevor confidence in their plan while documenting their activities. Rita Kowalski's surveillance confirmed Derek's suspicions immediately. Within hours of Derek's announcement, Lydia called Trevor to discuss moving up their schedule. They met that same afternoon at the Grandview Hotel, not for their usual romantic encounter, but for what appeared to be a detailed planning session. The GPS tracker on Lydia's car revealed additional meetings with a real estate agent, a financial advisor, and someone Rita identified as a document forger operating out of a copy shop in the next county. Trevor's activities included purchasing additional luggage, visiting a jewelry store to liquidate several expensive pieces, and making a substantial cash deposit at a bank Derek didn't recognize. But Derek's masterstroke was still to come. On December 30th, he called Lydia from his office with news that would force their hand completely. "The Portland deal fell through," Derek said, injecting just the right amount of disappointment into his voice. "The investors got cold feet at the last minute. I'll be staying in town after all." Lydia's silence lasted 3 seconds too long. "Oh, that's too bad, Derek. I know you were excited about the opportunity. Actually, I'm thinking about taking a different approach," Derek continued. Maybe it's time to sell the business. Take the money and invest in something more stable. I've been thinking about your father's suggestion that I consider a partnership with the Ashford Gallery. Art seems like a growth market. Derek could almost hear Lydia's heart racing through the phone. If Derek sold Holloway Construction and invested the proceeds with Trevor, it would provide them with millions more than they planned to steal. But it would also require them to remain in Millbrook to maintain their charade indefinitely. Have you talked to Trevor about this? Lydia asked, her voice carefully neutral. Not yet. I thought I'd discuss it with you first. What do you think about the idea? I think you should follow your instincts, Derek. You've always been so good at knowing what's right for our family. The irony of her response was so perfect Derek almost laughed. Instead, he pressed his advantage. I'm going to call Trevor tomorrow and set up a meeting. Maybe we could all have dinner together this weekend, discuss the possibilities. Lydia agreed with enthusiasm that sounded genuine, but Derek knew it was desperation. Trevor and Lydia were trapped between an opportunity too large to ignore and a timeline that no longer worked in their favor. They would have to make their move immediately before Derek could entangle them in business partnerships that would complicate their escape. Derek hung up the phone and called Rita Kowalski. They're going to run, he said, probably within the next 48 hours. I need you to be ready. Ready for what? Derek smiled for the first time since the Christmas party. Ready to watch everything they've planned fall apart in the most spectacular way possible. Chapter 6. The Net Closes. New Year's Eve arrived with the kind of bitter cold that made even hardened Midwesterners question their life choices. Derek spent the morning at his office, ostensibly preparing for the meeting with Trevor that would never happen. In reality, he was coordinating with Rita Kowalski and finalizing the details of a plan that had taken on a life of its own. The beauty of Derek's trap was its simplicity. Trevor and Lydia believed they controlled the timeline, that they could dictate when and how their betrayal would be revealed. Derek had allowed them to keep that illusion while systematically removing every avenue of escape they thought they possessed. Rita's morning surveillance report confirmed Derek's predictions. Lydia had withdrawn the maximum daily amount from 3 different ATMs, using accounts Derek didn't know existed. Trevor had been seen loading suitcases into a rented van, the same van that would supposedly transport his remaining art pieces to Chicago, but was actually packed with everything needed for a permanent disappearance. Most tellingly, both Trevor and Lydia had visited Dr. Patricia Wells, a travel medicine specialist who provided vaccinations and health certificates for international travel. The specific vaccines they'd requested indicated destinations in South America, not Europe, as Trevor's plane ticket suggested. Derek's phone buzzed with a text from Lydia. Working late at the community center tonight. Don't wait up. Happy New Year. The community center had been closed for renovations since October. It was a clumsy lie from someone who'd grown overconfident in Derek's supposed ignorance. Rita's tracking showed Lydia's car at the Grandview Hotel, where she and Trevor were presumably having their farewell celebration before implementing their escape plan. Derek drove home to find Emma getting ready for a New Year's party at her friend Madison's house, and Lucas camped in front of the television with enough snacks to survive a siege. Both children seemed oblivious to the tension that had characterized the house for weeks, or perhaps they'd grown so accustomed to their parents' distance that they no longer questioned it. Dad, can you drive me to Madison's? Emma asked, struggling with the clasp of a necklace Derek recognized as one of Lydia's more expensive pieces. Mom said I could borrow this, but I can't get it fastened. Derek helped Emma with a necklace, noting that she'd also borrowed Lydia's favorite earrings and a bracelet that had been a 10th anniversary gift. Either Lydia was being unusually generous, or she was distributing jewelry she wouldn't be able to take when she disappeared. Of course I'll drive you, Derek said. What time should I pick you up? Madison's mom said she'd bring me home tomorrow afternoon. We're having a sleepover after the party. Perfect. Derek had worried about how to keep the children safe during what he expected would be a chaotic night. Emma's sleepover solved half the problem. Lucas, you want to spend the night at Grandpa's house? He's been asking when you'd visit again. Lucas looked up from his video game with interest. Derek's father lived 40 minutes away on a small farm where Lucas could shoot BB guns and drive the ancient tractor without supervision. Can I take my PlayStation? Sure. Within 2 hours, Derek had both children safely away from whatever was about to unfold. He drove Emma to Madison's house, helped Lucas pack for his grandfather's farm, and returned to an empty house that felt like a stage waiting for the final act of a play. Derek poured himself a scotch and sat in his study, surrounded by the evidence of 20 years of building something meaningful. Family photographs showed happier times when Lydia's smiles had been genuine and their children were young enough to believe their parents were heroes. Business awards and certificates documented Derek's rise from day laborer to successful contractor. The contrast between what he'd built and what he was about to lose felt surreal. His phone rang at 10:47 p.m. Rita Kowalski's voice was tight with urgency. "Derek, they're moving." Lydia left the hotel an hour ago and went home. "She's packing." Trevor's at the airport filing a flight plan for a private plane. Not the commercial flight to Switzerland, a private jet to Mexico. Derek felt adrenaline surge through his system. Mexico gets better. The plane belongs to a shell company Trevor's been hiding. He's had this plan for months, maybe longer. The Switzerland tickets were misdirection in case someone was watching. "Where is Lydia now?" "Still at your house." "But Derek, there's something else." "She's not alone." Derek's grip tightened on the phone. "What do you mean?" "Trevor's there with her. They're loading boxes into his van. I think they're taking more than just her personal belongings." Derek was already moving towards gun safe. He'd learned to shoot as a teenager, hunting with his grandfather during the years after his father left. The .45 caliber pistol felt comfortable in his hand, familiar and reassuring. He'd hoped it wouldn't come to this, but Trevor and Lydia had forced his hand by escalating beyond infidelity and theft in a home invasion. "Call the police," Derek told Rita. "Tell them there's a burglary in progress at my address. Tell them the homeowner is en route and may be armed. Derek, be careful. Don't do anything that can't be undone." Derek hung up and drove toward the confrontation he'd been preparing for since the Christmas party. The time for patience and planning had ended. Trevor and Lydia had made their choices. Now Derek would make his. Chapter 7. The Confrontation. Derek parked his truck 2 blocks from his house and approached on foot, using the cover of winter darkness and overgrown hedges along the property line. The house he'd built with his own hands looked different now, lit from within by the same warm lights that had once represented sanctuary and family. Now they illuminated something much darker. Through the living room window, Derek could see Lydia directing Trevor as they packed boxes with items Derek recognized. His grandmother's silver service, family photographs in expensive frames, electronics, and documents from Derek's home office. This wasn't a lover's escape. It was a calculated robbery designed to strip Derek of everything that held personal or financial value. Trevor moved with the casual arrogance of someone who believed he'd already won. He handled Derek's possessions without care, dropping a framed photo of Derek's deceased mother onto the hardwood floor and leaving it there when the glass cracked. Lydia showed no reaction to the damage, focused entirely on filling a jewelry box with items from her collection. Items Derek had purchased during better times when he'd still believed in their marriage. Derek circled to the back of the house, using his key to enter through the kitchen door he'd installed himself 8 years ago. The familiar sounds of his home, the humming refrigerator, the settling of wood beams in the winter cold, seemed alien now that strangers were ransacking everything he'd built. He could hear their voices from the living room, low but urgent. "Just leave the furniture," Trevor was saying. "We can buy new things when we get settled. The important thing is liquid assets and anything easily portable." "I want the painting from the bedroom," Lydia replied. "It's worth more than everything else combined." Derek knew the painting she meant, a small landscape by a regional artist he'd bought for their 5th anniversary. Lydia had claimed to love it, but Derek now realized she'd probably been calculating its resale value even then. Derek moved through his own house like a stranger, noting what they'd already taken and what they'd left behind. His construction awards meant nothing to them. The children's school photos had been ignored. Even their wedding album lay discarded on the floor, its leather binding torn where someone had removed photos that might have value. The sight of his discarded wedding album was what finally broke Derek's careful control. Not the theft, not even the betrayal, but the casual destruction of memories that had once meant everything to him. These people had invaded his sanctuary and defiled it, treating his life like a garage sale to be picked over and discarded. Derek stepped into the living room doorway, his presence unnoticed for several seconds while Trevor struggled to lift a box of Derek's tools and Lydia sorted through documents she'd taken from his office safe. When Lydia finally looked up and saw Derek standing there, her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, guilt, and finally a cold calculation that revealed exactly who she'd become. "Derek," she said, her voice steady despite being caught in the act of robbing him. "You're home early." Trevor spun around, dropping the box of tools with a crash that sent wrenches and screwdrivers scattering across the floor Derek had installed with his own hands. Trevor's face showed pure panic, the expression of a man who'd been planning this moment for months, but had never truly believed he'd have to face Derek directly. "I guess I should have texted first," Derek replied, his voice conversational despite the rage building in his chest. "Though it looks like you're both a little busy to check messages." The three of them stood in Derek's living room like actors who'd forgotten their lines. Outside, Derek could hear the distant sound of sirens, still several minutes away, but getting closer. Rita had made the call as instructed, providing Derek with a deadline for this confrontation. "Derek, this isn't what it looks like," Lydia began, falling back on a lie so transparently false it bordered on insulting. "Really?" Derek gestured to the boxes, the scattered belongings, the obvious signs of theft. "Because it looks like my wife and her lover are robbing me blind while I'm supposed to be out of town." Trevor found his voice, though it came out higher than his usual smooth tenor. "Look, Derek, we can explain everything. This is just a misunderstanding." Derek smiled, and both Lydia and Trevor took an involuntary step backward. They'd never seen Derek truly angry, had never understood that his calm demeanor masked something much more dangerous when properly provoked. "Oh, I understand perfectly," Derek said. "I understand that you've been planning this for months. I understand that you forged my signature to steal $800,000 from our home equity line. I understand that you've been liquidating assets and preparing to disappear to a country without extradition treaties." Lydia's face went pale. "How did you know about all of it?" Derek completed her question. "Because I'm not the stupid, boring husband you described me as at my own Christmas party. Because I've been watching you both for weeks, documenting every move you've made, every lie you've told, every dollar you've stolen." The sirens were getting closer now, and Trevor was edging toward the front door with the desperate look of someone calculating whether he could run fast enough to avoid what was coming. "I wouldn't," Derek advised, noting Trevor's positioning. "The police are already en route, and they'll be very interested in those boxes you've packed with stolen property." Derek reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone, scrolling through the photographic evidence Rita had compiled. "Bank fraud, theft, conspiracy, burglary. That's quite a list you've managed to accumulate. And Trevor, those aren't even the most serious charges you'll be facing." Chapter 8. The Reckoning Unfolds. The police arrived in a cascade of red and blue lights that painted Derek's house in alternating colors of authority and justice. Detective Sharon Morrison, a woman Derek knew from various city council meetings, led the response team with the kind of professional efficiency that suggested she'd dealt with domestic situations before. "Mr. Holloway," Detective Morrison said, noting Derek's calm demeanor and the obvious signs of theft throughout the living room. "Rita Kowalski called in a burglary in progress. Can you tell me what's happening here?" Derek gestured at the boxes, the scattered belongings, and the two people who were trying to look like anything other than thieves caught in the act. "I came home to find my wife and her boyfriend stealing my property. They've been planning to disappear with assets stolen from our joint accounts." Detective Morrison's trained eye took in the scene quickly. The packed boxes, the scattered personal items, the guilty expressions on Lydia and Trevor's faces. "Ma'am, sir, I need to see some identification." Lydia produced her driver's license with shaking hands. Trevor fumbled for his wallet, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. Detective Morrison examined their IDs, while two uniformed officers began documenting the scene and inventorying the packed boxes. "Mrs. Holloway," Detective Morrison said, "this is your residence?" "Yes, but..." And Mr. Ashford, what's your relationship to this household? Trevor's mouth opened and closed without sound for several seconds. Finally, he managed, I'm a friend of the family. A friend who's helping pack boxes at 11 p.m. on New Year's Eve. Detective Morrison's skepticism was evident. Mr. Holloway, do you want to press charges for burglary? Absolutely, Derek replied. But that's not the only crime that's been committed here. Derek handed Detective Morrison the folder of evidence Rita had compiled. Photographs of Trevor and Lydia's affair, documentation of the forged loan documents, bank records showing the systematic theft of marital assets, and a timeline that revealed months of premeditation. Detective Morrison reviewed the documents with growing interest. Mr. Ashford, Mrs. Holloway, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As the Miranda rights continued, Derek watched his wife and her lover realize that their carefully constructed plan had collapsed completely. Lydia's perfect composure finally cracked, tears streaming down her face as the handcuffs clicked into place. Trevor maintained his silence, but his face had gone ashen as he calculated the legal consequences of his choices. Derek, please, Lydia said as Officer Martinez guided her toward the patrol car. Think about the children. Think about our family. Derek's response came from a place of cold fury that had been building since the Christmas party. I did think about our family, Lydia. I thought about it every day for 8 years while you were planning to destroy it. The house felt impossibly quiet after the police cars departed with their prisoners. Derek stood in his living room, surrounded by the wreckage of his marriage and the evidence of betrayal, so complete it had transformed his sanctuary into a crime scene. But Derek's plan was far from complete. The arrests were just the beginning of a reckoning that would extend far beyond criminal charges. Over the next several days, Derek began implementing the broader consequences he'd designed for everyone who had participated in his betrayal. The forged loan documents provided grounds for the bank to freeze all accounts associated with Lydia's theft, trapping money she'd planned to access during her escape. Trevor's art gallery, already compromised by his asset liquidation, faced additional scrutiny when Derek provided evidence of tax evasion and insurance fraud to the appropriate authorities. Derek called Emma and Lucas to explain what had happened, delivering the news with clinical precision that matched the way Lydia had planned to abandon them. Both children were devastated, but Derek noted that neither seemed surprised by their mother's capacity for deception. Dad, Emma said during their phone conversation, I knew something was wrong. Mom kept asking weird questions about our schedules and whether we'd ever want to travel. She was probably trying to figure out how to take you with her, Derek explained. But her plan didn't include staying in one place long enough for you to have stable lives. The revelation that their mother had been willing to uproot them for an affair with a man they barely knew completed the children's understanding of Lydia's selfishness. Neither child asked when she would be coming home. Chapter 9. The Final Resolution. 3 months after New Year's Eve, Derek sat in his lawyer's office reviewing the final paperwork that would close the most painful chapter of his life. Lydia had been sentenced to 3 years in federal prison for bank fraud, with additional state charges pending. Trevor faced similar federal charges plus tax evasion and conspiracy, ensuring that his own prison sentence would be significantly longer. The divorce proceedings had been straightforward given the circumstances. Lydia's criminal conviction voided any claim to Derek's business or assets, while her abandonment of Emma and Lucas eliminated her parental rights. Derek had gained full custody along with a judgment that would claim any future earnings Lydia might achieve after her release. Emma and Lucas had adapted to their new reality with the resilience of teenagers who'd already learned not to trust their mother's promises. Emma threw herself into planning for college, determined to create a future that didn't depend on anyone else's reliability. Lucas discovered a talent for construction work, spending afternoons at Derek's job sites and learning skills that connected him to his father's legacy. The house sale closed yesterday, Derek's lawyer informed him. The buyers are a young family from Chicago who appreciate the craftsmanship. They're planning to keep most of your custom work. Derek nodded, unsurprised that strangers would value his house more than his wife had. The sale proceeds, combined with insurance settlements and recovered stolen assets, had restored Derek's financial position while providing a substantial college fund for both children. Derek had purchased a smaller house closer to town, a fixer-upper that would give him and his children a project to work on together. The symbolism wasn't lost on any of them. They were building something new from the foundation up, using skills and materials that would last. The phone on the lawyer's desk buzzed with an incoming call. Derek's lawyer glanced at the caller ID and frowned. "It's the state attorney's office. Do you want to take this?" Derek nodded, curious about what new development might affect his case. The conversation was brief, but revealing. "That was interesting," the lawyer said after hanging up. "Lydia's been trying to contact you from prison. She's claiming she has information about Trevor's finances that might help with asset recovery." Derek considered this for exactly 3 seconds. "Tell them I'm not interested." "Derek, there might be money involved. Significant money, if Trevor was hiding assets we didn't discover." "I don't care." Derek's voice carried the finality of someone who'd already won everything that mattered to him. "Lydia made her choices. She can live with the consequences." Derek gathered his papers and prepared to leave, but his lawyer had one more surprise. "There's something else. Trevor's parents want to meet with you. They're offering to pay restitution beyond what the court ordered, apparently trying to minimize their family scandal." Derek smiled, remembering Trevor's arrogance and sense of entitlement. "How much are they offering?" $2 million, plus a public apology. It was more money than Derek had lost, enough to secure his children's futures and expand his business beyond anything he'd previously imagined. The offer represented everything Trevor's family valued: the ability to buy their way out of consequences, to treat criminal behavior as a social embarrassment rather than a moral failure. "Tell them no," Derek said. "Tell them their son made his choices, and now he gets to experience what it means to lose everything you thought you could count on." Derek drove home to find Emma and Lucas working on homework at the kitchen table of their temporary apartment. They'd grown closer since Lydia's arrest, supporting each other through the social awkwardness of having a criminal mother while maintaining their grades and activities. "Dad," Madison's mom asked if we want to come to dinner this weekend, Emma said without looking up from her calculus homework. She said it's been too long since we had a proper family meal. Derek smiled at the irony. His broken family had found more genuine support from neighbors and friends than they'd ever received from Lydia's sophisticated social circle. "That sounds nice. Did you want to go?" "Only if you're okay with Mrs. Patterson asking a million questions about whether you're dating anyone yet," Lucas warned from behind his history textbook. Derek laughed, realizing it was the first time genuine humor had filled their home in months. "I think I can handle Mrs. Patterson's curiosity." As Derek helped his children with their homework, he reflected on the choices that had brought them to this point. Lydia and Trevor had seen him as boring, mediocre, someone whose stability could be taken for granted while they pursued excitement elsewhere. They'd mistaken his patience for weakness, his loyalty for stupidity. Derek had proven them wrong in the most comprehensive way possible. He protected his children, preserved his business, and ensured that everyone who betrayed him faced consequences that matched their crimes. Most importantly, he demonstrated to Emma and Lucas that actions have consequences, that integrity matters, and that building something meaningful requires more than charm and good intentions. Derek's phone buzzed with a text message from Rita Kowalski. Saw the news about Trevor's sentencing. 8 years federal, plus state charges pending. Thought you'd want to know. Derek deleted the message without responding. Trevor's fate no longer interested him, just as Lydia's attempts at reconciliation from prison fell on deaf ears. Derek had moved beyond revenge into something more powerful: indifference to the people who'd tried to destroy him. 3 months later, Derek broke ground on the largest project in Holloway Construction's history, a mixed-use development that would revitalize Millbrook's downtown core. Emma and Lucas helped with the groundbreaking ceremony, operating machinery under Derek's supervision, while local media documented the family business expanding into its next generation. Standing